maker knew the Jeep's electronic transmission shifter was defective. Take a listen.
Our unbelievable grief. We decided to come here to prevent other family for the same tragedy. Anton was our only son, and it was a remarkable human being. We hope that this lawsuit will make our family never go through the same hell as we're going right now.
Your heart certainly breaks for those parents right now. Joining me now with more on this lawsuit, automotive expert, also known as the car coach, Lauren Fix, and CNN legal analyst Danny Savalos. Lauren, I want to start with you. We know Anton Yelichin's Jeep was part of a recall during the time of the accident, but it's a little complicated. I want to take a look at a demo by CNN Money that explains the gear shift issue.
The gear shift in this Grand Cherokee is, simply put, confusing. When you push the gear shift lever forward into park, it bounces right back up to this upright position. But if you don't push it far enough, it does the same thing. So the only way to know if you're really in park and not in neutral or reverse is to look at these little letters on the gear shift handle that may be covered up by your hand or at the letters in the gauge cluster.
And it turns out Anton's car was actually in neutral mistakenly versus actually being in park. Why would they design a gear shift this way?
Well, as part of the redesign when they did the new Grand Cherokee, and as a journalist, when we look at these vehicles, we understood the design and the style, and it made a lot of sense at the time. But as journalists, when you test drive vehicles, we do give feedback to the manufacturers, and none of us had that problem because we're used to driving vehicles like BMWs where you have that monostable shifter, which is similar but a completely different design. And this obviously was a problem because in later years, after 2014 and 2015, they changed that back to a regular standard shifter with gates. And there is no gate, so for a consumer, it is kind of confusing.
Danny, there have been more than 100 crashes tied to this problem, but Yelichin's death is the first known fatality attributed to it. How could this affect other lawsuits moving forward?
You look at all those accidents, the National Highway Board has reported a bunch of these complaints, so the death is certainly compelling in terms of damages, but the fact that there have been hundreds of people who have had this problem really helps any lawsuit, because in showing a negligent design, you don't have to show that anyone manufactured any part incorrectly. That case goes to the original plans for this automobile. And if there was some reasonable alternative that wasn't too expensive, they may be able to hold the manufacturer liable. And in this case, there have apparently been recalls, and the fix is doable. It's not only possible, it's actually something that can be fixed. So if it's something they knew about and they ignored the risk, this could be a potential very large case.
So, Lauren, let's talk more about this recall. Fiat Chrysler filing a recall notice with the federal safety regulators before Anton's death. The family attorney actually saying that notice was mailed to his LA home 7 days after he was actually killed. First, I want to know, is that normal? And secondly, why did it take so long for this recall to even happen?
Well, initially it was what's called a TSB, or a technical service bulletin. If you went to the dealer and complained about the fact that you couldn't tell if the vehicle was in park or not, what they would do is they would take it into the service department, they would make the correction, and this is a problem because the fact is when it finally did become a recall, after hundreds of complaints went back to National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, which you can file any complaint at safercar.gov, then they decided to make it a recall because of injuries. Then they sent out the notification. Unfortunately, Anton had already passed by then, and this is the first death that we are aware of that can contribute to this. And I still wonder in my head, I'm not an attorney, but is this something that the manufacturer should have enforced with the dealers to explain to a customer when they bought this, because the same transmission is on the Challengers and also on the Chargers? Well,
Danny, I'll throw that over to you. Is this something that the manufacturer should have explained, or that they told someone when they were buying the vehicle in the first place?
Recalls are always an interesting issue when a manufacturer discovers a problem, because there's one of two ways a manufacturer or a automobile company learns that their car has a defect. Either somebody gets hurt or they discover it on their own. And when they do and they issue a recall, there's a big issue about how do you get that out to the consumer. You got to get it out to the dealer, then out to the consumer. But consumers are scattered to the winds. And then there's an issue of, when they receive it, how soon can they bring it in? I mean, we all have busy lives. So what kind of red alert do you need? Hey, you need to fix a light in your dashboard. Or there's a recall that could potentially, the issue could potentially kill you. It could be fatal. So this is a very, very important issue for automobile companies, which is when they have a recall, how do they get the word out, and how do they minimize their liability going forward?
And more importantly, Danny, I want to know how important is this timing of that letter going to be in a lawsuit, considering that they received it 7 days after Anton Yelichin's death?
Well, there's an old rule that subsequent remedial measures are not admissible to show that there was something wrong with the original product. But in a case like this, the fact that really what's important is what they were aware of before the incident. The fact that they were surely aware of a problem before 7 days or before the day of the accident, it appears that there was already a recall. So if they were aware of it beforehand and it was something that they knew, what if they knew it way back when they were designing the car? That's even more damning if that's the case. So these cases focus somewhat on what the automobile manufacturer or company knew after the problem, but really the primary focus is what did they know before and how much did they know about a safety problem.
And Danny, from your experience, you think the courts will rule in the favor of Anton's family here?
If this case ultimately matures, if this case ultimately matures into a class action, I think at least preliminarily it seems that they have enough to get certified and move forward. There's already an existing class action on the case, so it's going to move forward, and from all indications now, it seems like a relatively strong case.
All right, Lauren Fix, Danny Savalas.